Okay, so we laid out some UI elements and now we need to make them actually do something in our game. So the first thing I want to do is create a UI manager that's going to control the references to these different components we have here. So let's go into our scripts folder. We're going to create a C# script that we'll call UI manager, like so. Then on our canvas, we're going to attach that on here once it finishes compiling. And it's almost done. Nope, there we go. It has to do a big update. There we go. Now we can pop it on there like so. And then we can open this up in Visual Studio. Okay, so we want to create references to those TextMesh Pro elements that we added in. And to be able to access TextMesh Pro stuff, you need to go up to the top up here in Unity and say using TM Pro. So then in our UI manager script, we can say public TMP underscore text. So these are text elements that are in the TextMesh Pro system. So we're going to have one for the time text, which will be how much time we have remaining, and then we'll have another TMP text for the score text, which is obviously going to show how much score we have. And we'll return and deal with score in a little bit, but we're just going to focus on the time system in the game for now. Okay, so that's all perfectly fine. We have our time, we'll have a way to display our time. Let's just hook both of those into the UI manager. So let's put the time remain value into there and the score value into there. Now we need a system next to actually control how much time we have and to control the flow of the game, basically control if the game should end and keep track of our score and things like that. And we don't necessarily want to do that in the UI manager. The UI manager should just be controlling the UI elements. So what we're going to do is we're going to create an object in here that we'll call the round manager. So it's going to control the round in general. And then in the scripts folder, we're going to create a C# script called round manager, and we're going to attach it to that object. Let's go to our round manager here. Let that compile. There we go. And let's open this up. And for this, we're going to need a few variables. So first of all, we're obviously going to need to know how much time we have. So we're going to say public float round time. I'm going to set that to be 60 by default. And of course, we're going to want to update the UI manager, update the displayed time. So we'll need a variable to let us know about the UI manager. So we're going to create a private UI manager that we'll call UI man. And then in the awake function, so instead of start, I'm going to use awake. In the awake function, we'll say UI man equals find object of type UI manager, like so. So we've got our UI manager there, that's perfectly fine. And then in our update, what we're going to do is if our round time is greater than 0, so if there's time remaining, we want to make that time count down to 0. And how we can make it count down is, if you remember the time.delta time system, which allowed us to control speeds of different things relative to each other, time.delta time is the amount of time it takes for each frame to happen. So if it is a game running at 60 frames a second, it'll be 1/60th of a second. And we can use that to count down things in a regular manner. So if you want something to count down over 1 second, you can say, hey, take away the time.delta time, and after 1 second, it will have gone down by 1 second. So we can say our round time should be minus equals time.delta time. So what this does, it'll just take time.delta time away from the round time. And then we'll do a check and see if our round time is less than or equal to 0. So if for some reason it's gone just below 0, which can happen with time.delta time, or if it is exactly 0, if either of those situations have occurred, then we should be ending the round. So we're going to say here we have our round time is equal to 0. So we want to be able to make sure that our display will always say exactly 0. We don't want to say minus 0.001 or something like that. And then we'll also make it, in a few minutes, we'll come back and make it sure that it handles something to happen when the round should end. But for now, we just want to have our round time be counting down. And then just below that, in our update, we want to actually update the display that we're seeing. So we're going to say the UI man, so that's the wrong one, hold on, let's try this again. UI man dot time text dot text. So what we're doing, why we say time text dot text is if we go look at the time remaining value here, when we say time text, we're referring to this specific component, and when we say dot text, we're referring to this text box within that component. So we're directly saying, hey, we want to affect this element of it. So our time text dot text should be equal to whatever the round time currently is, but our round time as it counts down can be like 1.7654, 1.444444. It can be a lot of small decimal numbers, and we don't really want to display that to the player. What we would like to do is say, hey, it's 7.5, it's 3.2. We can show one decimal place just to get the idea to our players, but we want to keep it a little bit more simple. And luckily, when you're converting a number into a string, because we want to use a string to store in our text box, there's a handy little shortcut we can do to actually just show one decimal place, which is if we say round time, we can say dot to string, and then in a bracket we can write inside quotation marks 0.0. And what that'll do is it'll give us one decimal place of a result. You could also do 0.00 to get 3 decimal places, but we just want one decimal place. And then we're going to add on just after that in a quotation mark the letter S. So it'll be 5.6 S for seconds. So let's save this and go back in and make sure that this works. We'll let that compile. With our round manager, it should have 60 seconds. If I press play, there we go, we got our time counting down nicely. And let's just put it at 3 seconds. So if we count it down, it'll get to 0 and it'll just stay at 0. So perfect. Right now, there's nothing else happening. We're going to make it now actually end the round in an interesting way, and we'll do that in the next video.